Okay, so hopefully that is recording. I have limited visibility because of the way my screen is sharing. Can everyone hear okay? Could Padma just ping in to make sure that there are no technical glitches this time?
It's all looking good to me.
Okay, awesome. Okay, welcome back for most of you, and welcome to the new people. This is the third of 3 discovery phase show and tells, and the idea is that we kind of share rough and ready work in the open as we're going, so that you get a sense of where we're at, and also you can feed in and catch our uh, misperceptions or errors as we go. Briefly, this Net Zero SME Coalition is a cohort of all these organizations and actually some more who haven't yet managed to get their logo on the collage. And the idea, just let me make sure I'm selecting slides, is that net zero rather is a huge ambitious target that we must all make an effort to hit, so as to ward off the worst consequences of climate change. And SMEs are a massive, the biggest part of the economy by most measures, and at the moment quite confused and lacking in some of the supports that they need to be compliant. So this cohort really wanted to make sure that we're dividing and conquering, we're not conflicting, so that we can properly understand what different kinds of SMEs need and provide coordinated and joined up support for that. So the other thing that we want to flag up front as well is that the project is we've received the commission as a service design agency to try and run the project as an agile digital service discovery, so that we really get inside the heads of SMEs, we understand the landscape, and we try and understand what as people, as users, they're experiencing on their journey to transition, so that we don't just assume that our template for going net zero will actually be received joyfully by them, and therefore we're following an agile service design methodology. And also we wanted to flag that COP26 is in November. The government has set ambitious targets. There's campaigns being planned, and it's a great opportunity to try and cash in on that momentum. So all of these things have led to our union as the Net Zero SME Coalition. And this is the discovery phase, as I mentioned, and that means that we don't want to take our understanding of the problem for granted. We want to test our assumptions and, like I said, get inside the heads of business owners, business managers, decision makers, and understand what motivates them and blocks them, frustrates them, scares them. And then we want to map the journeys that they're currently going through and hopefully make interventions so as to really, really accelerate their journeys. So far, we've done things like a very, very broad desk study of existing research, and that covers like over 150 reports. We've done a cross-sector survey, and thank you so much to all of you who've been aggressively pushing it out on social media. We have, on the back of this research, prioritized cohorts to do deep dives with in more detail, further research them, and then done more one-on-one, done qualitative interviews, which is where we really, that's the crux of this kind of methodology, is where we get all the good stuff, real insights, free of hopefully too many of our assumptions. And we've already shared some theories about what we think is happening and what needs to happen next. But in this sprint, we'll go into more detail. We've closed the survey at kind of, for now, just for this phase of discovery, at just over 250 results. So they've been analysed, and the bulk of our interviews are now done. That's our one-on-one kind of hour-long interviews with business owners. We are going to share some of the top user needs and the common themes that are coming across. And in the background, then we're prepping for our final report, where we try and get a better sense of the user journeys and what needs to happen next, basically. So the last thing I'm going to do before I hand over to Padma is a flag of the common themes, just for those who weren't here before, and actually just to kind of set the scene for the things we're going to throw at you without much context. So the first one that's come up again and again is that net zero is a muddy term for so many reasons. People don't know what it means, as some people do, some people don't. It's open to interpretation when you want to get specific about what targets applied to who. Scotland and England have different interpretations. Some people felt it's too conceptual and removed from the kind of the hard language of saving Earth. And also there's a real fear among many that it's there's an opportunity in there to kind of offset, I suppose, and not really deal with the problem. And if we don't start taking real carbon reduction action in the direction of carbon negativity now, then we won't be able to hit the meaningful target so that our planet isn't quite so, it doesn't suffer so much. There's no way to sugarcoat that, really, is there? SMEs really care, and they're aware across the board, they care, but they find themselves quite judged because they have very impossible decisions to make, keep your business open or save the planet. And that for many people, that's a real dichotomy. So there's an opportunity there to provide supportive, like a way out and a language out. Trust is a problem in many respects, in that people feel the regulatory goalposts are shifting, that regulation is being evolved so as to help the country hit its targets, and people feel that they can't have confidence in the investments they make because quite soon maybe the goalposts will shift again. Calculating carbon is hard. People don't trust the tools necessarily that they're getting to understand the problem that they have and the interventions that need to make. And there's some conflicting sources of information, or lots of information that looks quite legitimate, but it's not. There's still insufficient trust that is the information. Network is really important for many reasons, for the solidarity, for finding people that you can trade with, for finding your kind of green network. And also SMEs are very cash poor, and they don't have big reserves for consultants, R&D and things like that. So learning from other people is really, really important, and finding ways to shortcut these specialist knowledge gaps is really important. And obviously COVID has had a massive impact on some, not on every sector, but financial stress, mental illness even is really peaking at the moment. And that's kind of in some ways all the more reason to offer very simple, uncomplicated, unstressful, calming support, a way out. And I'm going to pass over to Padma on that front, I think, to pick up with this. Awesome.
Great, thank you very much, Linda. So I'm going to sort of talk about what has come out from the user research interviews, and it very much backs up what we've found so far, but just gives us more understanding of the why of all this. So I'll talk about kind of what SMEs are telling us they care about, what's blocking them from taking action, and what is this all suggesting to us about what we should do next. So the first point, so what do SMEs care about? The number one thing is their businesses. They need to stay viable. They need to stay in business. So financial viability it needs to be at the heart of the conversation about carbon reduction. So when we're kind of presenting advice and guidance and the how-tos of this, we need to focus on, and this is how you make it work for your business, rather than this is a good thing to do. As Linda said, the smallest companies can't afford to buy in consultancy. They can't get the research and development done. They can't get the sustainability consultants in, and therefore kind of online help, case studies and peer support is really important to them. And at the moment that's lacking. I'll talk more about that later. And one of the interesting things that's come out of the interviews is there's a real focus on the UK, like so UK businesses feel like UK businesses, and they want to. That's more significant to them in terms of their motivations than global issues. So they're aware of global issues, but they're British businesses. And so in terms of the language and the sort of the messaging, we would recommend that the UK needs to be the focus. So we're helping the UK achieve its net zero targets. As we found in the earlier research, it's been further come out in the interviews that SMEs who have made this transition to being carbon neutral or whatever, they are, by the time they have got to that stage, they're pretty expert in all this stuff. They understand all the different aspects, and one of the important things that they understand is the carbon embedded in their supply chains. So if they're serious about this and they're really wanting to reduce their carbon footprint, then what they're wanting to do is trade with other SMEs and other larger and smaller suppliers who have gone down this path. So providing an opportunity to have a clean supply chain would be something very attractive to them. And the other thing is that people are really happy to talk about this stuff. People really care about it. As I say, they become experts like down the journey of transitioning, and the ones who have done it successfully are really happy to share what they've learned and what works and what doesn't work from a business perspective in their particular sectors, and we can draw on that going forward. So what are the blockers? This is from the survey results. The number one thing is money. Money is stopping people from transitioning. So anything that we can do to point out financial support that's available for this. Like there are, one of the interesting things that came out of the interviews is that the people have successfully transitioned in a profitable way. So it's possible to do that, and there is money available, and there are, I think the lack of money is quite often a perceived lack of money, and so there is a way of doing this, but it takes skill and it takes knowledge, and so in terms of the advice and support that we give, flagging that up is going to be important. Next thing is lack of time. And then don't know where to start, too many of the priorities, and also don't know where to find help is a biggie. So all of those together, like a kind of online service, can deal with a lot of that. Next slide, please. There is a perception that there's too much red tape, whether it's an accurate perception or not, it's perceived there's too much red tape, and there's a disconnect between what government does and what businesses need. And that is slowing people down, for taking action, and it feeds into this lack of trust. People don't feel that the government has got their backs and the government understands where they're coming from and what their needs are, and people are dropping out of they may have the motivation and desire to transition and reduce their carbon, but they just feel like there's too much friction there. They're too busy, they haven't got the time, etc., etc. And this sort of feeds into advice and application processes currently are long, confusing and filled with jargon. People are busy, particularly smaller businesses. They just don't have the headspace or the time in the day to wade through this stuff to make sense of it to the point that they can take action. So they're just dropping away. This is one of the biggies as well. There's a lack of confidence. So when small businesses are making their decisions about what they're going to put their money into, whether it's buying new vans or refurbing their buildings or whatever, they're making quite long-term decisions when they're doing that. They need to be very confident that if they make this decision and they buy into electric vehicles or whatever it is, that decision is going to stay correct for the long term. And at the moment, they don't have that confidence. So we need a way to build that trust. And again, perceived lack of transparency leads to lack of trust. So this ties into the jargon-filled, confusing, complex information that's available at the moment, and difficult application processes for funding, and also the innate complexity needs to be, like, one of the principles of government digital services is do the hard work to make it simple. So there's a lot that can be done in terms of the way that you present, design and present the experience for people who are looking for this information, to build that transparency and build that trust. and like even fundamentally down to the term net zero. That's actually quite a complex term. What does it actually mean? What's the difference between net and gross? That sort of thing. There's a lot of complexity built into that term. So right from the off, people are thinking, well, what does that mean? It's not very transparent. It sounds like it might be a bit of a government scam, like maybe we're hiding things in the background. The idea of carbon offsetting, like people who have gone down this journey sort of see that as a bit of a cop-out. So yeah, we need to find ways to unpack the complexity. Like, people are intelligent, they're eager to learn, but they need it presented in a way that they can understand it quickly. Ideas coming out of the research. So yeah, clear, succinct, relevant to their sector and their business and their stage of transition. Online content built around user needs. So if I'm a user, I don't want to. I've got a mental model of this subject area, and I don't want to have to wade through a specialist's mental model to be able to understand it. I've just got a particular need right now, and I want that need met as quickly and easily as possible. So I type something into Google, and I want something to come up that's relevant, that's true, that I believe in, and that allows me to take action quickly. So designing content around that meets those needs would be very, very useful. Peer support and advice. One of the things that sort of came out of this is there is a lot of expertise in the world, the SME world. People are happy to share. People have quite specific questions, and ways of getting those questions answered would be very helpful. So kind of user-generated content, user-generated like peer-to-peer support. I think there's a space for that. So we've talked about forums, we've talked about wikis, we've talked about Q&As with others who have gone down this journey. Those sorts of things would be useful and attractive to users. Oops. Yeah, a way to trade and collaborate with others. So we talked about greening the supply chain. People who've gone down this journey or are going down this journey want to trade with others in that world. So creating an online way for them to do that would be very attractive to them, rather than leaving them to try and seek that out. And that would be a way to get people involved, because obviously if you're a business, you want to trade. And if there's a way to make yourself visible and increase the chances of trading, that would be attractive, and that would kind of help build momentum for this net zero thing for the UK. One of the issues is how do we know what our carbon footprint is? How do we know what our emissions are? And that's potentially quite complicated. If there was something that allowed them to calculate that easily and quickly, that would be very, very attractive for people who are already motivated to make the change. And we believe that digital's got a real opportunity there to help with that. Regular Q&A with experts. So so one of the things is that a lot of the information that's required is very, very specific, and content design is one way of helping, designing content around specific user needs that are kind of well articulated and research and evidence based is one way of doing that. But when we get down to very, very specific questions that might be time based, or might be like a particular business in a particular stage with particular conditions, they've got very specific questions and they can't afford to talk to sustainability consultants or whatever. So having an opportunity for where people can ask questions and get answers to those specific questions would be a way to kind of draw people to this this space, and would also be a way that online could really add value to small businesses. Trusted accreditation. So one thing that several of the interviewees talked about was that they've put in a lot of time and money and effort to reduce their carbon, to make their businesses genuinely ethical and genuinely part of the solution. But there's not really any way that they can present that to potential customers and potential buyers within the supply chain and whatever. So some kind of trusted accreditation that they could talk about, put on their merchandise, put on their website and that sort of thing, that actually meant something and was for real, would be attractive to them. And the other thing was, around that disconnect between what government's doing and what businesses need, or the perceived disconnect. If there was a way of kind of bottom-up policy making, that would be something that would help to build that trust that is currently lacking, which is therefore blocking people from getting on board and taking action. So agile policy making, agile regulation making is one way of doing that, where you're building your policy making based on kind of iterative, user needs based approach to constructing policy, rather than a kind of top down, old school policy making style. So all this has kind of led us to what we plan to do next, which is to develop this online information service. We can move into delivery quite quickly with this. It will kind of take action and show momentum and start to add value to SMEs quickly. And basically what we're looking at is building this online information service to meet the top information needs first, target quick actions first, and engage the early majority to take action. So at the moment, we've got the early adopters who are expert level, they've done it, they know what they're doing. And that's quite a small percentage of the SMEs in the country. And what we need to do is move that on in the kind of adoption curve, which I'll sort of show in a minute, to get the next bunch of people on board. And that's what we'll be looking to hit. So this is, I introduced this last show and tell, this is a proposed shape of what things might look like in terms of user journeys. And if you'll just go to the next slide, Linda. And this is what we're talking about focusing on in this next stage. Oops.
Sorry, Padma, I was in chat and it's exited this somehow. Are you able to hear me, guys?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to go back this way and try and get my thing back. Apologies, is this the one you're on, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, what I was saying was this is the kind of the wider landscape. So there's the campaigns going on, and there's going to be an increasing push for campaigns to encourage SMEs into net zero, making the climate commitment. And there's going to be people coming in from Google search because they've got a need that they're trying to meet, and they're typing things into Google search. We've got all the different member sites, all the different membership bodies that SMEs are part of at the moment, and that can kind of feed in. And then we've got the SME Climate Hub, we've got the stuff on gov.uk, and this is a way of kind of building that into an intuitive user journey. And what we'll focus on is building out the information service that will be in the heart of that, and will allow the flow that is currently not there, that is leading to it being very difficult for SMEs to take action. Next slide. And if you take the next slide as well, Linda. Yeah, so and we're also looking at focusing on the smaller end of the businesses, the ones that can't afford sustainability consultants, the ones that are time poor, that are looking for advice any way that they can get it, and that also make up the vast majority of SMEs in the UK. So that they're under 10 employees is what we're anticipating. The content will also be relevant to everybody else, obviously, but they're the target market, the vast majority of SMEs in the UK. So this is what I talked about before about the early majority. We're trying to move across that. The chasm between early adopters and early majority is notoriously difficult to achieve, but we feel that this is the best way of doing that, by building a user needs-based information service. We can make it easy for the early adopters to help the early majority, and start to build some real momentum in this transition. So these are the sort of top user needs that are coming out so far. These are quite overarching needs. There's a lot built into each one of these. First one is understand what net zero means for my business, so I can make smart decisions. So, you know, it's not just what does net zero mean. It's like what is this carbon reduction thing, and why do I care? Why? What does it mean specifically in my sector and specifically in my stage of the game? And specifically in terms of what actions I can take next. So know what actions I can take that make sense for my business. We talked about people needing to make long-term decisions and needing confidence in order to be able to do that, so we can help people with the right content. Know what the regulations are, know what's coming next. Again, so that we know that this is going to be a changing landscape, and a place that is where SMEs have confidence that they're going to get it's going to be correct information, it's going to be current information, and they're going to be able to forward plan based on this stuff, will be very helpful to them. And a place where they can collaborate with others. You know, we talked about the Q&As, we talked about forum, we talked about wikis, we talked about, you know, all that kind of peer-to-peer stuff. We'll be looking at how we can, there's stuff that already exists and there's stuff that's in the pipeline and that's being done, and like how do we kind of pull that together in a way that will help SMEs find it and be able to use it and get value from it. And with that, hopefully Ed is on the line and I can hand over to him.
Thanks very much, Padma. Thanks, Linda. Hi, everyone. So just quickly on next steps. So as Linda said, the sort of very next thing is to gather all this together in the next few days and produce a report of the discovery phase next week. And then in parallel to that, we are working with BEIS and COP26 colleagues to figure out how closely, whether we tie in with the campaign, you know, the Race to Zero campaign, the campaign to get 1 million SMEs signed up to the Race to Net Zero. So there seems to us there's a huge opportunity for this work to tie in really closely and support and integrate with that work to gain momentum over the next year. So we're having those discussions just about how and whether we do that over the next few days. And then we'll be in touch in the next week or so to share next steps. I mean, what's clear is we really need your input to shape the way forward. So what we'll do is probably put on a workshop with our steering group, with anyone else who wants to join, to look at how to sort of share the sort of picture of what the service and plan is looking like, and get your input to that. So that's what we're thinking about next steps. It'll all happen quite quickly, so we'll want to stay in touch. Please stay in touch as well. Obviously, you know, we've designed this to be an open and inclusive process. It's really important, the sort of collaboration and the co-ownership. So we want to keep that going. Obviously, there's a sort of the next week or so is sort of decisions being taken as to how we take this forward, but we'll keep in touch. And I think we've allowed now some time for a bit more time this time for discussion. I think if that's right, we've got this till 9:30 if people want to stay on. So really keen to have any questions, have a bit of a discussion about what the team has found, and ways forward and that kind of thing. I wanted to thank the team particularly. It's not the easiest of circumstances to sort of get this kind of work done really quickly, but I think the team's done a great job so far to pull this together. So thanks very much. And Padma, you've been talking for the last 20 minutes, so a number of questions have come up along the way about the detailed research that I didn't necessarily know the answers to. So if you've got the answers, or others in the team, perhaps we can get back to a couple of people who've asked questions I didn't necessarily know the answers to.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
The first one that caught my eye, was it was asking for clarification on, where is it here, on whether or not, first of all, whether or not procurement came up, government procurement in particular, in interviews. Did government procurement processes come up at all? Do you have anything to say about that specifically?
It came up in the sense that the lack of transparency thing. So yeah, it did come up, and it was around that it's possible for organizations to tick the boxes, but not actually do the work, not actually do the behavior change work, and then go on to win the government contracts. And there was a feeling that was it wasn't a fair playing field, and it was a disincentive to actually transition. And this is one of the things that where this accreditation idea came out, that you would only be able to get this accreditation if you had genuinely made the moves, put the money in, put the time in, and transitioned, genuinely reduced your carbon emissions, and gone on that journey. And there was some advantage to that in terms of procurement. That it would make you more competitive in that world, rather than just getting in some consultant who can teach you how to tick the right boxes, and then you're as able to win these contracts as somebody who's actually done the work. The other thing that came out of it was that in order to do things more sustainably in certain sectors, you need to raise your prices because the cost is higher. However, the budgets being offered weren't higher, so governments were asking for these things to be met, but weren't providing the money that would allow you to win those contracts. So that felt like a disincentive to get involved. Yeah.
Does anyone have any burning thoughts on procurement, or will we move on to or Sam, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, just a quick insight, and other people on this call I'm sure will know much more about it than I do, but my understanding is that there is a review of I think it's based around the Social Value Act, so that was sort of including some of these conditions in procurement, and I think there's some sort of review around that, and particularly the climate element of that, in order, Padma, exactly to sharpen the knife and make this a more effective tool for change, rather than just a tick box exercise. So I'm not quite sure where that's at, but I'm quite sure that there'll be a COP26 timetable in mind as they look at that.
Interesting. Great. Thank you. The other thing that, sorry, just since you're on the line there, Sam, you asked about the national pride thing. Could you tease that out a little bit, Padma?
Sure, yeah.
Did you see that comment?
No, I didn't see the comment, but yeah, so as in like SMEs sort of feeling British and wanting to be part of that. Yeah,
what's behind SMEs wanting UK to achieve its targets, national pride?
Okay.
What motivates them?
That's us pulling insights from the user research out, and kind of positioning that in a way that we might be able to use it, rather than the user research participants weren't saying, I would really like to get behind this net zero push of the UK. What they were saying was, yes, global issues are really important, but stuff going on the other side of the world is less important to me than stuff going on in the UK. And actually, I'm a British business and I need to thrive in a British environment. And therefore, things that are around, so in terms of their mental model, it was more like UK first, then rest of world. And it occurred to me or it occurred to us that that might be something that could be harnessed in terms of the messaging that the net zero, like getting an SME to think in terms of my business transitioning to net zero is more complicated than getting the SME to talk about reducing their carbon to help the UK transition to net zero. And that sort of helps them think in terms of being part of the UK solution, helps them get involved in if there's going to be kind of campaigns that we were talking about what it felt like in the UK around the Olympics when the Olympics were in London, and that sort of the push to be part of that, and it felt like a positive thing. And there's a lot of kind of like negative, not very fun climate emergency. It feels quite heavy emotionally. We talked about the impact of COVID. We talked about, it's a stressful time. So all of those different things came together to lead to that bullet point. I hope that's helpful. Ed, have you got some?
Okay. I was just going to say, a couple of people are coming in and saying, was there a theme coming out about, quite local action where people at perhaps, city,
Absolutely.
Local authority or county level could work together
Absolutely.
to solve some of these problems together?
Yes,
whether it's customers, staff, owners, suppliers, because if you get everyone working in a place, then you can almost get a net zero place by people working together, and that gives it that sort of local resonance where they can do something about it. They can be part of the solution. Absolutely,
and also, like, a lot of businesses are quite locally focused, and they want to be visible in their local community. They want to make local social impact and all that sort of thing. So yes, very much so.
And there's one about Nina. So in the background here, something like 2/3 of local authorities have declared climate emergencies. There's not necessarily yet clear plans for what that means, but there is that sort of leadership from local authorities. So Nina's asking, did any people talk about local authority targets yet? Is that sort of feeding through to public consciousness or to business consciousness in local areas?
They didn't talk about local authority targets. They talked about an awareness of the differences between different local authorities, and some being better than others at regulating and like helping SMEs be competitive, particularly in the home builder sector, I believe.
Can I sorry, Bob, I just want to flag that people are starting to politely put up their hands. So yeah. I encourage everyone to do that. And whenever you're done with this, we'll hand over to David, who's got his hand up for a while.
Thanks, Linda. Really interesting. I run my own research and innovation practice and also government advisor. Really, I just want to pick up and not lose the point about procurement, because fundamentally that is one of the ways that we can get this solved. I've just spent the last 2 years working with Brighton Hove City Council, writing their circular economy route map. Now, we're talking about net zero. Circular economy is integrated into net zero. And what we've actually done is put in place some benchmarks for the city to work to over the next decade, or the next 15 years, in fact. And one of them is we've actually got the procurement team for the whole of the council to commit to a benchmark of purchasing 75% of all external spend on circular economy activity, goods and services, and 50% of that with local suppliers. The role of the public sector in determining the future of net zero is absolutely critical at a local level, because they have a number of functions which are so critical to determining the environment of the local area. They've got the planning role, they've got the procurement role. Those two factors on their own can make a huge difference, and bringing the policymakers on board with this early on. We took 150 officers over 6 months through circular economy training to help them understand what the benefits of circular economy was, but then fundamentally what they could do in their day job to actually implement that and make changes. And we've now got housing officers going out for specifications for new build social housing that include a whole raft of circular economy activities that will all lead to net zero. So I think at a local level, we shouldn't underestimate the power of the local authority if we can give them the right tools and the right information to then enable small, medium enterprises to actually deliver that.
That's super interesting. I mean, thank you so much, David. I want to allow John come in there if you want to bring in your home builders point and
yeah,
the other side of that.
Yes, okay, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I mean, it's just a reality. If you, I've been at the Federation for many years, and whenever there's been an active focus on moving environmental issues forward, one of the biggest frustrations that our members have had is where there's different policies and different targets in different local areas, because certainly in our industry, that potentially translates through into having to have different designs, different procurement arrangements for what a business would essentially regard as the same product in different areas, and that's clearly not efficient, and would tie back to the concerns that your interviews and survey have picked up about viability of businesses and the challenges for SMEs in that connection. So it's not that anyone's against the direction of travel, but from a purely business perspective, if you have a multiplicity of different local focuses that aren't well aligned in practice, that is actually also a business concern and a potential business risk.
That's definitely something we've been talking about a lot, because especially in the construction sector, it seemed to come up again and again, the impossible decisions that you have to make to achieve the goal of climate responsibility and stay in business, and that's kind of where the agile policymaking thread has been mentioned, not massively developed, but the only way to fix those problems is to have some kind of grassroots, like top-down and bottom-up collaboration, where people work together to not only come up with a standard for what good looks like, but also a more actionable methodology for that. And so I think subsequent recommendations would include incentives for projects like that to happen, because coordinating those projects is a massive overhead that no individual organization in this network immediately has the resources or the buy-in to do. But it would be a very, very important unblocker, we think, for, I don't know if other people agree with this, but it's been a hot topic this week. Would anybody else like to come in on that point? Maybe for other sectors, things that we should know about?
I think I'll just come in on that housing point, because it's an area that we're working very closely with Home Builders Federation, and actually what the plan there is to set up a body right across the sector who can work together on the solutions right across the sector. So I think that probably is useful findings through this work, because I think it sounds as if the small house builders are saying, that there needs to be, a sort of bottom-up solution that works for users, that works for home builders, where they can collaborate, where they can, work out the solutions together, perhaps in partnership with government in a more agile way. So I think that's probably a useful finding coming through this work.
Interesting. James, would you like to add to that point?
Yeah, sorry, it was just really from the other way around, that talking to people who are procuring frameworks and managing them for local authorities, and they say they get a huge amount of waffle on sustainability when they're seeing tenders bid, and then almost no ability to assess whether anyone's delivered on that. And their frustration is you can promise the earth to win some work, and then there's very little delivery on that through the life of the contract. Excuse me.
No worries, thank you. Should we switch over to, I don't know if it's the same topic or different, but David's got his hand up again, so take the conch.
Yeah, cheers, Linda. I agree entirely with James. We've just been working with the local authorities to put in place a supplementary planning document for new build housing and to incorporate an element of net zero. And that's exactly one of the things that we've seen, that many developers will meet the requirements of the tender, but then when it becomes to actually delivering it, there's no oversight from the local authority because they haven't got the resources. So you end up with delivery of the same old, but it's couched as being development. There's some interesting work being done across a number of different areas, which I think, Edward, picking up your point in terms of creating a new body, absolutely. What I would probably suggest is, you'll know that there's lots of already groups out there. How can we bring together the existing groups so that we give them the empowerment to do this? I was looking at low carbon back in 2007 as part of the Regional Development Agency, and this isn't a new topic, as we know. There are just some new solutions, and I think this partnership working is absolutely critical.
Ed, would you like to take that?
No, absolutely agreed. And, you know, I could, give me long enough, I could probably name 20 organisations that are doing sort of parts of it around, you know, particularly around new homes and development. And I think that to some extent the job is one of coordination and making sure that everything adds up and builds, you know, to get the job done rather than sort of lots of little things. So I definitely agree with that point.
Would anybody
Mind if I just come in,
please do.
Linda? Yeah, sorry, thanks. I can't find the button to raise my hand, so apologies for that. So we've been working for this year and about 18 months on a facilitation scheme for SME energy efficiency and clean energy projects. I just wanted to chip in on the point about inconsistency of local targets and kind of local ambitions across local authorities. And, you know, I know it feels like that's an important area, and I'm sure it is, but it doesn't make any difference to the action on the ground. I mean, the reality is that most SMEs have done very, very little on this subject. And, you know, there's a huge opportunity for, you know, no regrets, easy win, energy efficiency measures and other aspects of sustainability that generate a cost saving that desperately needs local facilitation to overcome all those barriers that I think, you know, were articulated really clearly, really matches our, you know, sort of our characterization of SME decision making as well. So it sort of doesn't matter whether there's been a climate emergency declaration or not. What matters is action on the ground to overcome those barriers and get SMEs, you know, acting and doing things and pushing the right buttons. That was my thought.
Alex, can I ask a question there? So what does that look like? And is that sort of government providing loads of funding for sort of every local authority to do it?
No,
how do you do it?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly going to be a role for government and for LEPs and local authorities to get these initiatives off the ground. But of course, the great thing about, you know, particularly the action that you would call low-hanging fruit, you know, is that it generates a cost saving and generates a return. So, you know, all the talk about how you channel private investment and third-party finance into the transition, well, this is what it looks like. You know, you seed something, you seed local facilitation, and you create conditions where private finance can lend into businesses that want to do something, and they simply pay for that over time. You know, so you're taking advantage of that cost saving. So I think they will become self-funding activities over time, or a large part of it will. But inevitably, they do need, I think, public sector leadership and coordination to, you know, to get off the ground, and that strong local flavour. You know, your local reputation matters if you're an SME. Just look at any SME that's ever sponsored a roundabout. You know, they need visibility, they need profile, and they need to be associated with, you know, doing the right thing.
That's right. One quick one. In terms of scale, is local authority about the scale at which people sort of understand and feel, you know, an affinity towards?
I think it depends. So city scale is I think the city as an entity is very resonant with people. I mean, actually, our pilot is in Oxfordshire, so it's the whole county. And I think because Oxfordshire is a place that's awash with you know, different initiatives, people are used to thinking of that as a kind of decision-making, you know, unit, I suppose. But I think it will vary. So what we've been doing is using BEIS funding, developing a sort of operating system for how you might run this facilitation service using the public sector and the community sector as the team that goes out and, you know, delivers these services for businesses, but doing that in a way that we can license that system to other regions as well. So we will see as we get further down that road what the right sort of geographical region is that resonate. I mean, is it the village, or, you know, or is it the is it bigger than that, you know? I mean, you've got the Midlands Energy Hub as a supposedly as a kind, who have been very supportive, by the way, and fantastic, but it covers an absolutely vast region from Worcestershire all the way through to Lincolnshire. So any kind of local focus has kind of been lost a little bit in that, you know, that sort of aggregation. So I think there is something in where's the sweet spot, you know, in terms of local focus.
Thanks.
Can I pass back to Padma there, just he's had his hand up?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Yeah, just on the point of private finance, one of the things that I didn't mention in the show and tell was one of the things coming back from SMEs is the difficulty in getting loans and getting investment in innovative solutions. So they know it works. They've come up with a great business idea that will help with the solution, but they can't attract funding from the private sector because it's seen as too risky. Like, the private sector is risk averse and doesn't get it. And I think some way in terms of policy, like if there was some way of kind of guaranteeing loans or supporting that kind of private investment in more innovative solutions, I think that would be helpful.
There's talk of lower interest rates for green investments rather than.
Just a quick sort of counterpoint to that, if you don't mind. I think that's certainly a problem. I mean, I don't think conditions have ever been worse for SMEs trying to access finance to do things like that. But there is a vast amount of action that can be taken on the net zero agenda that's not innovative. It's very basic and just hasn't been done. So I think it's about facilitating that action. And if you can matchmake the right finance provider with the right SME and the right technical solution, then, you know, finance can flow using very conventional financial products like loans and hire purchases and things like that, you know. So I do think it's about that facilitation, you know, more than anything else.
Right, thanks.
Would we like, Sam has had a point in there for a while about the pros and cons of explicit linkage to various other initiatives. Sam, do you want to speak to that for a sec? If you're
that was just picking up on that point about the race to zero. So you were saying that you were considering sort of explicit linking to that or not, and I just wonder what sort of you saw as the pros and cons of that.
Padma, did you get enough information there to speak to?
Well, I guess, sorry to interrupt, but I think, Edward, maybe it was more sort of like top down, you guys thinking about it rather than necessarily input from the interviews.
Yeah, no, I think it's a live discussion with the Net Zero Business Champion just about how we, because obviously you know, he's creating huge momentum during this year. That's his goal, to really create that sort of snowball effect of small businesses taking actions, you know, making it almost the sort of Olympics, you know, the 2012 feeling of people, you know, participating and being part of the, you know, the run up to COP. So, you know, can we really sort of dovetail with that effort and design advice and everything to support that effort during this year and then build for the longer term, or should we not sort of dovetail in that way? So I think that's the that's the question. I mean, to me, in a sense, it makes makes perfect sense to sort of join up and come in behind that initiative. But I think we need to work that out. And obviously, I think there is a sort of question at the back of people's minds, I think, about whether small businesses are thinking about reaching net zero by 2050, because that seems such a long way out. You don't necessarily, you're thinking about survival over the next couple of years and shorter timescales. So does that commitment make sense? And I think the point is, one can give people confidence if they're taking short-term actions, that they can be on that path. They can say, yes, I'm up for this. We don't know exactly the detail of what it means by 2030 or 2050 or exactly where I'll be there, but I want to be part of this. I want to start taking action, and I'll sign up. So, I think there's still some sort of
just a mini thought, Edward, maybe just linking that to the finance point. Could there be an incentive to do that? Because it doesn't necessarily seem it's so independent interest, but if you could link that to slightly better terms and conditions on your loan or whatever else it is, sponsored by the government, that might be quite interesting.
It does need those. There needs to be some sense of reward, I think. Whether it's that there is one accreditation, there's a sort of gold star, count me in, something like that, that's sort of recognised, or some financial benefit. I think that needs a bit of thinking just to get that sort of sense of feedback that you're doing something. There's something in it for you.
Just to dive in, I think to my mind, the main risk is that we need to make sure that we're designing content using the language of the user, not the language of the campaign. And so as long as there's a kind of flexibility around that, and that we can work together with the campaign to speak in a language that makes sense for SMEs, then it's an obvious thing to try and do, to try and work together. But what we don't want to do is start using kind of gov marketing speak and hope that that's just going to work for users. We need to be user first.
That's an apt note upon which to end. Should we try and wrap it up there? Jump in, Ed, if you'd like to.
Sorry, Linda, just one just picking up on Padma's point.
Okay.
Return on investment for the SME is absolutely one of the terms that we need to use. I've been doing this with churches for the last 5 years who haven't got much income, and you give them the return on investment over 3 or 4 years, and particularly in LED, you can see very clearly that, okay, you spend £2 on some lighting, within 6 months it's paid for itself. That is the sort of language that SME talk.
Exactly.
Great, thanks all. So we'll be in touch, set up next steps shortly. But thank you everyone for joining and participating.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone. I'll email everyone today as well with the link to the slides and to the video, which you can share about social media. And if you're part of an organization that's not already affiliated formally with this network, please, if you send me your reply with your logo and any information, we can get you hooked up. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll stop the recording here.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. I'm going to do a few bits before I let this go. Like copy the chat and the like.
Okay. Hey, Linda.
Hey, David, how's it going? I'm trying to stop the recording. I have so many screens. A lot of them have gone missing. I can't see you. At some point mid conversation, my pause recording.